What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about all the books that have been read and completed in the month of August. This month happened to be the Dark Academia month as well, so if that sounds like it's something you would enjoy, then definitely stick around and we will go through all 14 of these books. It's reading time here at J-Bay's Corner. For those of you that are new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday on bookish related content, primarily fiction. I have a fiction addiction, as I like to call it, and if that's something that is of interest to you, then you're definitely in the right spot. We talk about all different sorts of genres, but this month in particular, that transitional period of summer into the fall season as school is starting is one of my favorite times of the year, and I just feel like Dark Academia is the most appropriate time to be read during that season. Which is why this video is going to be primarily focused on Dark Academia as a theme, but I do read all different types of genres. I don't read that much nonfiction, and if I do, it tends to swerve more towards memoirs, and that's typically at the beginning of the year. But if any of this strikes your fancy or sounds interesting, then definitely stick around. For those of you that are returning, I can't thank you enough for being here, for continuing to help me build this bookish community, and for enjoying all of these books with me, because it's only fun if we get to share them. That's all I have to say, and I cannot thank each one of you enough for the opportunity to be able to share these books with you guys. Also, total side note, I am going bald. It's making me very, very sad. I used to have a full head of hair, and I don't know what's going on. So that's why I keep flipping and playing with my hair. I do apologize. It's really making me mad because I miss having a full head of hair. But that is neither here nor there. So without further ado, let's jump into the books, which is what everyone is here for. So I'm actually going to start with the two books that we actually read for book clubs. And the first one is The St. Ambrose School for Girls. Now, this book was read for the P&G Book Club, or Paper and Glam Book Club, which is run by a wonderful woman named Lisa Marie Landreth. She and her fellow sisters in the reading group, we basically vote on these titles once a year, and then the titles are posted, and we all have the selections available to us, pardon me, a year in advance so that we can pick up the books. Ooh, I also just noticed that my nails match this book. How fun. But if you are interested in checking out their group, it's the Paper and Glam group. They are on Patreon and communities, and just an absolutely wonderful group of girls. And we meet the last Thursday of every month to discuss our book over Zoom. So this month's pick was The St. Ambrose School for Girls. This book is by Jessica Ward. This particular book is very, very much more along the lines of psychological thriller, coming of age, that kind of vibe, but it does also fit into the world of Dark Academia. It is set in a private school where our young girl, our main character, has recently been transferred to after going through some difficulties in her old school, as well as after her diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which we get to read more about, and we kind of see her highs and lows and her experiences throughout the course of this book. She moves to this new school where she's bullied and she deals with some other things, and you kind of get to see her thought processes, her thinking, her overwhelming kind of breakdown, which I think is very common in a Dark Academia space. We definitely get to see that further discovery of the darker side of the human mind and the ways that it can play tricks on you. So that was definitely looked at in this. The boarding school vibe was very on par for Dark Academia as well. And then eventually a murder does take place in this book, and we do follow the story of how this murder happened or why it happened. We have some shady characters that are technically in positions of power, which is commonly seen in a Dark Academia trope as well. So overall, all the tropey components that you would expect in a Dark Academia novel were seen in this book, and I do think that overall this novel was quite excellent. But the thing that I liked about this book a lot is the emphasis they put on the main female character and her relationship with her peers, as well as her self-discovery of herself and her personality. That was really interesting to read, and I would definitely recommend this book. I ended up thoroughly enjoying this, but I can see why some people in the book club did not enjoy it as much. much. I do think that this is definitely worth picking up and reading if you are in the space for a dark academia book that is slightly more on the psychological side, similar to Donna Tartt's Secret History, in terms of vibes and more of that moral gray social like character development, more so than the focus on the murder. But overall, great book, 4-star read for me. Absolutely loved it. If I seem like I'm a little all over the place, I do apologize. I am currently sick with COVID. I am slowly recovering, which is why I'm finally filming this video. But if you hear me coughing or I sound slightly delusional, this is why. Just wanted to put that out there. But I am speedily recovering. I'm on day 9. We are almost there. And yeah, everything's going to be great. But in this self-isolating haven that I've created for myself, I figured I would continue to read and share the reading experiences. So I do apologize for any coughing, for any delusional babbling kind of talking that may happen in this video. Thank you. The next book I want to talk about is Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. Now this, in my humble opinion, was more true crime than it was dark academia. The only thing that made it dark academia adjacent is the fact that the murders that take place in this book happened at a university, and that was it. Outside of that, this is 100% a true crime novel. It is not a dark academia novel, which I had read somewhere that it could be potentially seen as dark academia. That was a mistake. But this was the book we read for the Overbooked Book Club. That is the book club that I am personally a part of, and I absolutely love that club. We are primarily run through Facebook, and I know Facebook is kind of like outdated at this point. But if you are on Facebook and you are interested in joining the book club, if you look up the Overbooked Book Club, then I apologize. If you end up looking up the Overbooked Book Club, definitely join the group. One of the admins will let you in. We vote on a book once a month, and we basically discuss it at the end of the month on the last Wednesday of every month, with a few exceptions here and there. But for the most part, our discussions are absolutely wonderful, and they happen on a Zoom call. We do it at 6 p.m. CST, 8 p.m. PST, and 9 p.m. EST, which I do realize is late. We do oftentimes take polls for the different times that work for different people, and currently that 6 p.m. slot seems to be working best for a lot of our active members. However, we are always open to discussion for changing the time. But if you are interested in being a part of that book club, check it out. But Bright Young Women in particular was absolutely brilliant the way this book was written. It's actually given voice to many of the women who were subject to the horrible tragedies that were committed by Ted Bundy. So this book was inspired by the Ted Bundy serial killings, as well as the murders that took place at the university. The story is following 2 or 3 main female lead characters. One of them is in the present time, who is basically seeking justice for the murders that have happened at the university, and she wants to bring the defendant to justice. The second story is told from the perspective of Ruth, who's actually one of the unfortunate victims of this serial killer and one of his first kills. So it's a very interesting novel, very interesting take. We get to kind of follow the storyline, the build of the storyline, how various pieces of evidence got lost, how, you know, he escaped so many times from prison, how when he finally gets brought to court, how they end up trying him and winning the case. And you kind of get to see the different stages of the story as it takes place. And you also get to see very strong female lead characters, which I really enjoyed. Jessica Knoll does a great job of just kind of taking these very interesting female characters and giving them more breath and more personality and kind of breathing life into them and giving them more to say. And I absolutely love that about her writing style. Her other books have been more like fiction. I wouldn't say horror. Like, they're not horror. They're like thriller vibes. Like Favorite Sister. That one was absolutely amazing. So in general, Jessica Knoll's writing is already pretty phenomenal, but I think this book in particular was quite fascinating and different than her usual storytelling. And I absolutely loved this interpretation of this true crime story, basically following the murders from Ted Bundy. But absolutely excellent book. Would recommend. I ended up giving this a 4-star. That is the book club books for this month. So now we are going to move into the rest of the novels. Some of them are series, and for the series, I have done series reviews. Some of them are incomplete series, so I will do a full series review once it's complete. But because I do have 12 other books to get through, we're going to move through them pretty fast. I just wanted to say. Someone wanted to come say hi during the video. This is Taco. Can you say hello? Can you say hello to the nice people? So Miss Taco is here hanging out with us today. She may be climbing on and off the desk and all kinds of things. The next book that I wanted to talk about is Nocticadia by Carrie Lake. This book is also, true dark academia. But what makes this book really interesting is it actually talks about the story from the perspective of a medicinal disease that's kind of broken out and it's killing a bunch of people. And so our main female lead character watches her mother die from this disease that everyone believes doesn't exist. And so when she writes a paper basically detailing what happened, and this disease is being researched at this very elite university, she gets an acceptance letter to this university that she then goes to attend. And in the process, the professor, who also happens to be the one doing the research, inadvertently ends up crossing paths with her and realizes that she's quite intelligent. And we get to basically go through this journey of understanding where this new disease came from, how it came to be, how her mother got infected, all of these things. So you're also getting this very interesting medically perspective in this book, and I like the fact that it had that component because obviously having studied medicine, I really enjoyed that component of this book. Outside of that, you also have the traditional dark academia components. You have the teacher and student dynamic. This is a spicy book. It's not like insanely spicy, but there are some spice scenes in this book for sure. You also have kind of like that dark elite university that's kind of like remote and by itself and all that stuff. You have murders that are taking place in this book as well. So it definitely is very interesting. It definitely has that dark academia vibe. It is a long book though. So I just want to put that out there. It reads very quick and it's very interesting to read because of the medical journals and the research that's being done in regards to this parasite that has basically become what they're studying. But I do think that at Nocticadia University, it is the only place that is known to be studying this particular parasite. So it's very interesting to read. It is a slow start, and it does take some time to kind of build into the story and the romance if that's what you're reading it for. But I would say overall it was still a really fun read. The only thing is for me, because it was so long, because it was a little bit slow, it was more of a 3.5 for me, but I absolutely loved the medical journal portion of this book. I think reading about the medicine, particularly in this book, was very, very fascinating. The next books that I want to talk about is actually part of a series, and again, I'll go into more detail with both of these books soon, but The Cursed and the Coven by Harper L. Woods. I absolutely loved these books. This was so good to me, but this is more like paranormal, supernatural, plus dark academia combined with a little bit of fantasy, if that makes any sense. So basically, we have a school that is for witches. The witches come from specific line of witches. They are invited to come to the school and learn. And when they're at this school, there are also vessels that happen to be there. Vessels are basically like vampires where the devil has sent his demons to inhabit these vessels. And the witches and the vessels live together in harmony, but without wanting to. The witches want nothing more than for them to return to their unholy origins, and the vessels obviously would like to live free without the need of the witch's blood in order to survive. So you kind of have this mutual rivalry that's taking place. Now, in the midst of all of this, the witches are also slowly losing their power, so they're hopeful that these new recruit witches that are coming in will help re-strengthen the Coven and bring back the balance of magic that is slowly being shifted and lost. Our main female character is very unique though, because she actually has 2 different witch bloodlines within her, and therefore remains one of the most powerful witches of all time. She also hasn't forsaken any of the natural laws and orders of the witches, which is also why nature responds well to her, whereas other witches have now lost this ability. So basically she comes to the school only to find out that there are deaths and murders that are taking place, the magic is weakening, and she has to figure out how to successfully overthrow the current witches who have abused their power and she believes is the reason why her aunt has been killed, and simultaneously at the same time receive an education and overthrow the vessels at the same time. That was a very poor description of what this series is about, but I just want to say there's a lot that happens in this series. It's very, very well written. Each book is extremely short. It's only like 290 pages. They are spicy. Delicious reads. Delicious reads. I couldn't put them down. I finished both books in one day and I read until 3 a.m. knowing it was a work day, and I still went to work the next day. I absolutely adored these books. These were both 4-star reads for me, and I'm very much looking forward to The Damned when it comes out. But overall, just a great set of books. Would definitely recommend, and definitely fits the dark academia vibes in terms of the castle that they're studying at and all these other things. And then it also has the paranormal and the supernatural. Perfect for October, but also great if you want to read that kind of seasonal transition paranormal-y book. Next up, I have Gothikana. This is, again, going back to more of a true dark academia, still quite an excellent book. In this book, basically, we have Corvina, who is a young girl whose mom is schizophrenic. And so because of that, they've also been isolated from society basically her whole life. Recently, her mother has been institutionalized, and now Corvina has the opportunity to seek higher education. However, because of their lower income status, as well as the fact that she doesn't have any connections, she doesn't really have too many opportunities afforded to her in terms of higher level education, until she receives an invitation to attend the University of Varanmore, which is where Gothikana takes place. So she then arrives at Varanmore and is told that because of her background and her status, and because she comes from this kind of lower income, troubled background, she has been offered this scholarship to come study and finish school there. So she basically attends university at the University of Varanmore. There she meets Vad. Vad happens to be one of the teacher's assistants who is also now teaching a course. So he's technically off limits, but he's also a PhD candidate / student. And there's something very strange and mysterious about Vad. Naturally, Corvina and Vad have a romance that then starts to ensue, as does often happen in many dark academia settings. But outside of the spice and all of that stuff that's going on, there are murders and deaths that are taking place at the University of Varanmore, and Corvina now has to figure out what's going on and why it's happening. There's also a slight element of the supernatural and this question mark of whether Corvina can speak to the spirits or has a sixth sense, if you will, about these things. So there's that element that's also in there. It's kind of like dark and spooky and fun, and it also speaks a little bit to mental illness and that aspect as well within this novel, which I think is really interesting. And it does also dive into human character and like the darker side of human psychology, which was really interesting. Overall, a really fun book. I think all of the dark academia elements are there. It also has the romance and the spice if you're looking for that as well. And overall, just perfect for a decent dark academia read. I wouldn't say it was anything to like majorly write home about, but at the same time, I did thoroughly enjoy the book. And I do plan on picking up RuNyx's next book, which is called Enigma. And I'm waiting for that book to arrive in the mail soon, hopefully, so I can pick up and read that book as well. But overall, this book was very enjoyable for me. I think it hit all the marks I needed for a dark academia book. And while it's not necessarily one of my top favorites, it is still a great read. I gave this a solid 3.5 stars as well. The next book that I read was actually a little bit of a breather in between all of the dark academia. Dark academia in general tends to be a little bit dark, a little bit heavy, so I wanted something that's a little bit lighter, a little bit fun, but still kind of coming of age and still kind of within the school realm. So I picked up the book Chemistry by Wang. This book is written kind of as stream of consciousness, and it's basically following the story of an Asian PhD student who is doing pretty well in life. Her PhD thesis is moving along a little bit slower than she likes, but it's moving along. She also just got a proposal from her boyfriend of many years, who is a PhD and is now getting his first job in teaching. And she just realizes as she's going through these movements that she's kind of lost perspective of who she is and what she wants out of life. And we basically follow her thought process and her growth through the course of this book as she kind of confronts various stereotypes that she's kind of found herself boxed into. She kind of looks into what her relationship with her parents is like and whether she wants something to improve from that. She really questions what she wants out of life, what she wants out of her relationship. And overall, it's a very sweet, like, kind of coming of age book and midlife crisis kind of book, if you will, or quarter life crisis book, I should say. But I think the book is satirical, it's funny, it's entertaining, it's witty, it's just very well written. The stream of consciousness did get to me a little bit in the beginning because it was hard to keep track of exactly where in the timeline we were with the main character in terms of the story. But overall, it was a really fun, fast-paced read. I ended up doing this on audio, so I finished this book in about an hour and 45 minutes or so. It did not take that long, and I was laughing through a large portion of this book, and also very contemplative towards parts of this book as well. Overall, I think it was a great read. I would definitely recommend it. It's fun, it's fast-paced, it's thought-provoking, and it sticks with you when you're done. So I would say this was a solid 4-star read for me. Next up, I have a young adult dark academia. This is The Murder Game by Carrie Doyle. Now, in this book, we have 4 students, 2 girls, 2 boys, who end up going out into the woods to rendezvous and have a little conversation, if you will. They're in boarding school. They're not allowed to mix the genders and all this other stuff. So they're doing this outside of curfew and against orders from the school when inadvertently they witness a murder. They then spend the rest of the book trying to figure out who committed the murder because the primary suspect for who committed the murder happens to be one of the students themselves. It was fun. It was fast-paced. It was very enjoyable. It was a classic thriller, dark academia. The added twist in this is our main male character has actually been a victim of abduction in the past himself. So it was also interesting to read a character who brings that background into the story and also explains why he thinks the way he thinks, and he's able to kind of puzzle these pieces together. This book, for anyone who loved How to Get Away with Murder. What is that book called? A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. You will enjoy this book. It was very fun. It was very entertaining. It's quick. It's fast-paced. And it's a solid read. 3-star read for me. Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. This book was excellent. I loved this book. This was probably a 4.5-star read for me. Basically, the premises of this book is, have you ever had a boss that you absolutely hate? Someone in your life that you feel like honestly just causes pain and despair to everyone around them? Well, look no further. Go to the finishing school for the Deletists. Basically, this novel is following the story of 3 main characters, with our main character being Cliff Iverson. And Cliff Iverson has a boss who has basically led to the death of multiple people, including the woman that he cares for and he loves. And he has now signed off on aeronautics plans that could potentially lead to the deaths of multiple people. And instead of dealing with the deficits and the issues in the plane, he decides that he's going to frame Cliff and get him fired instead. So then Cliff makes it a point and contention that before he does anything else, he's going to murder his employer. In the steps of trying to kill his employer at the beginning of the book, though, it comes across that Cliff Iverson did not think everything through, and he put himself in a position where he is very easily caught and could potentially end up going to jail for a murder that he wasn't even able to successfully complete. And so therefore he's recruited to go to the school for Deletists. In this school, you are taught how to intelligently delete someone out of your life, and you also have to go through multiple task lists to ensure that the deletion is something that should be completed. In order to apply, you have to write a thesis, or someone else has to basically write a thesis on your behalf to the university for you to be accepted, where you then go to the special school. Now, the only way to graduate from this school is by A, completing your thesis, B, making it through the program and potentially becoming a teacher, or C, you don't make it through, in which case they delete you. So very, very entertaining book. Also, delete in this case is murder, but very, very, very fun book, very satirical, very enjoyable. I absolutely loved this book, rolled on the floor laughing in some points, really, really enjoyed the character development, the overall vibes of the story, the concepts of the story. It felt very like funny Black Widow vibes is the way I would put it. It was just fun. It's a fun, fast-paced read, and I would definitely recommend it. And I plan on picking up all the other books in this series when it comes out by Rupert Holmes. Would recommend. Solid 4.5 read. We're getting closer to the end of the list of books. Magic for Liars is the next book. This book is also really interesting. It is following the story of our main character, Ivy. Ivy is non-magical and she is a PA and she's living life. She's fine. She's chill, except for the fact that she's really not. Things are not going the best for her. And her twin sister happens to be a mage. And so she is living in the wizarding world, living her best life. And so all of a sudden, when Ivy goes to work and she finds herself stabbed in the shoulder and all kinds of crazy things are ensuing, and a magical woman appears at her desk and basically says, hey, there's been a murder in the magical world and we need you to solve it. Ivy then gets transported into a world of magic and mayhem and craze, and she has to figure out how the murder of this woman took place, while also dealing with her estranged, magically gifted sister, of whom she is extremely jealous, and she feels like her life has been ruined by. Very entertaining book. I'm going to read the back because that's the best way to explain the vibes of this book. Ivy Gamble was born without magic and never wanted it. Ivy Gamble has an almost sustainable career as a private investigator, an empty apartment, and a slight drinking problem. Ivy Gamble doesn't in any way wish she was like Tabitha, her estranged, magically gifted twin sister. Ivy Gamble is a liar. So this is still a murder mystery. It takes place in a magical school. You get to see some really interesting students in this book. You get to see some really interesting dynamics between our main character and the other teachers in the school. You get to see kind of that family relationship being rekindled and her relationship with her sister being re-explored. In this book, you have youth that are looking for guidance that don't know quite how to seek it. You have just very, very fun little tidbits that are happening. And you have our woman who is very familiar with the magical world, but not a part of it herself, trying to basically navigate this entire situation. This was a fun, fast-paced read as well. I do think it fit that dark academia vibe, and it did have kind of like that quirky twist with the magical realism component to this book. Definitely a fun, fast-paced read, very enjoyable, very satirical, very entertaining. Overall, just have good things to say about this book. It was one that I could potentially see myself reaching for again. I would definitely recommend. This was a solid 4-star read for me. Moving on, A Botanist Guide to Parties and Poisons by Khavari. This is a series. This is the first book in the series. This is set in kind of, I want to say 1900s, back in the day when women weren't as common in the scientific fields. But we're basically following the story of our main female lead, Saffron Everly, as she goes to the university where her father used to work as an assistant professor in the poisons department of the botany department within the university. Many of her male colleagues, as well as her superior male director of that part of the college, look down on her, treat her very poorly, are very sexist towards her. But one of the male compatriots within the university actually appreciates her and her intellect. And so they kind of form a team in trying to figure out why someone was trying to murder one of the wives of a professor that happened to work at this university. This all also becomes a mystery that Saffron is trying to work through, because her professor that she's working under as the assistant professor for is the one who was originally framed for the murder. So she and her colleague, Alexander, basically decide that they are going to figure out who committed this crime and who's trying to murder people in order to remove the framing that has occurred of her of her professor, who she considers like a father figure. Very entertaining as well. Now, the only thing about this book is it is, again, set in 1923, so the romance is very closed doors, which is very cute. I also really did appreciate the wiliness of the two female lead characters. Also, the other fun part in this book is Saffron's roommate, who is absolutely hilarious, and I think the two characters together just make a great duo in terms of the friendship that they have. I also like the fact that Alexander's perspective is shared in some of the chapters, which was really fun to read, even though Saffron was the main narrator of the book. I also really did enjoy the conversations around the various poisonous plants and things like that. And I think overall the university setting was very fun. I don't know if I see myself continuing the series, that's the only thing, but I would say it was still a very enjoyable read. That being said, I think there are better dark academia books out there, unfortunately. So this was a 3-star read for me, and I think maybe it was just because I didn't particularly relate to Saffron's character too much, because I did find her slightly impulsive and slightly irritating. But that's a me flaw, not a book flaw per se. Their Wishes Games by Joelle Wellington is the next book I wanted to talk about today. This one is basically following the story of a girl who was all set to be successful. She got into an Ivy League college. She got into an Ivy League college of her choice. She's all set in order to move past her graduation. She has brought a lot of joy and happiness to her parents, only to have it all yanked away from her at the last second because of a fight that breaks out at the school. And now her scholarship has been revoked, her seat to the college has been revoked, and she basically has no prospects left ahead of her. And she has been suspended from school through graduation. In this turmoil that she's facing, she has to figure out a way to basically get her life back on track. And she inadvertently finds herself entered into a competition where she will be competing for the winning spot with the Remington family for their favor, in order for her to then have doors open to her for any university that she wants to go to and any future that she may seek. The Remingtons are basically adjacent to political royalty. Now, in the midst of all of this, she doesn't realize this competition is actually going to be taking place to the death, and that she's actually not only competing for the college seat of her choice, but also for the title of Mrs. Remington. This is a very entertaining book. It's fun. It's definitely Scream Queen adjacent if you've watched that show. It has a lot of dark humor to it. It's very twisty. It doesn't feel dark academia though. I would definitely call it more thriller than dark academia, but it was a very entertaining book, and it does feel very much like if horror was introduced to Greek Row. That's kind of the vibes of this book. Definitely recommend picking it up if you're looking for a fun, fast-paced young adult thriller. I'm so sorry guys, my throat is starting to die now as we're going through these books, but we only have 3 left, so I'm going to do this. We're going to make it through the rest of these 3 books. If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowlin. This book has been through many different book covers. It has been through many different phases in its journey to coming to this cover, but I absolutely fell in love with this cover, not realizing what this book was about when I picked it up. But it's just so pretty. This is a coming of age book. It's a young adult book that takes place in a school. It's not really dark academia, but it definitely fits that return back to school fall kind of vibe. In this book, we basically follow the story of 2 main characters told from the perspective of our main female lead character. She has been living next door to This boy, her entire life, they've grown up together. Their mothers are best friends. They are each other's favorite person. And yet when they got into college, he kind of goes into the popular crowd and she kind of goes with the artsy crowd. They both have different people that they're dating, and neither of them really gets along with the other person's partner, but they still care immensely about each other, even though they're slowly drifting apart, and they're trying to understand this new teenage relationship that they have. And while they're navigating through these circumstances and kind of figuring out what they mean to one another and rekindling their friendship and kind of identifying themselves, you also deal with other mental illnesses along the way. Pause. It also explores a little bit of teenage romances. You get a little bit of trigger warnings with this book in terms of depression, in terms of suicide, in terms of or suicidal ideation, I should say, not quite suicide. We do have a death that occurs in this book, which is very, very sad and overwhelming. You also deal with cheating in this book. So there's all kinds of like things that happen throughout the course of this book. But I thought it was a really beautifully done story, and I really enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. I'm very much excited to read the sequel to this book, and I will definitely be picking it up soon. I did want to wait until the special edition of that book also came out so I can have the matching set, and that book I believe releases in November. So very excited to get my hands on that and to complete the story of August and Finn. But this is a very, very, very beautiful, heartbreaking book. I would definitely say that it's probably one of my favorites that I've read in a very long time when it comes to young adult novels and coming of age books. I definitely think it's worth picking up and reading. This was a solid 4-star read for me and definitely perfect for the fall weather. The last two books that I want to talk about briefly in passing, because I have done a full series review on this particular set of books, is A Study in Drowning and A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reid. This is a beautiful, beautiful story set in a fantasy kind of world. Actually, there's a fantasy component, but I also feel like it's kind of magical realism as well to a certain extent. In this book, we have two students that we're basically following. Effie, who is a member of of the Lyrian Society, and then you have Preston, who is half Lyrian, half Argontian. And Argont and Lyria are currently at war. This is also taking place in a world where women are not thought to be as intelligent as men. And so we have Effie, our main female character, who is a beautiful girl who has kind of been marked to have a difficult life, who's not one who's very highly respected by her peers and is often seen as someone who just uses her wiles to get her way and not smart enough to be in the college to begin with. She gets into the architecture program at this school, which is the second highest level collegiate program, but she really wants to be in the literature college. However, they do not allow men or women into the literature college. While she's at the college, she unfortunately does undergo a sexual assault, and she's reeling from that. She doesn't really know how to survive at this college. She's kind of estranged from her parents, and she's also prone to seeing the fantasy world that the Lyrians believe in around her as well. And so she's actually on pills that was given to her by her psychiatrist in order to help her separate from reality and this fantasy world. In the midst of all of this, her favorite author ends up dying and goes to what they call the Sleeper Museum, which is believed to be the final resting place of some of the greatest authors of the Lyrian nation. And they are believed to come, it is believed that they will reawaken at the right time in order to continue the morale of the Lyrian people. So very, very highly respected and coveted place to be in the Sleeper Museum. So when the esteemed author passes away and he's been put into the Sleeper Museum, there is a notice that is posted at the university basically saying that the home that he lived in was in disrepair and the son would like to have an architecture student come out to their home in order to help come up with a blueprint as to how they can restore the home of this loved author. So Effie jumps on this opportunity. She's very excited to go to the home of her favorite author, see what that world looks like, and enter into her favorite story, Ungarid, and kind of get away from this university where this negative stigma has been following her around. She ends up going to this location and she meets the other student, Preston Hillary, who happens to be very, very snobby and full of himself, but also has a heart of gold. Where Effie sees all the grays in stories and she sees the fantastical, he sees only truths, only black and whites. And he has actually been sent to this esteemed home by his literature master of the college to prove that the author who's been entered into the Sleeper Museum is in fact a fraud. So now Effie is basically at this house with this strange boy whom she already doesn't necessarily get along with, and he is basically there to disprove and discredit the author that she is absolutely obsessed with. Together they form an uncanny team as they try to basically understand the truth behind the story of Ungarid, the truth behind the legend, while also escaping the fantasy clutches of the Fairy King, who Effie sees in every single shadow and every single man that she comes across that gives her the heebie-jeebies. Very sweet book overall. I do find Effie's character a little difficult to read because she doesn't really have anyone to support her, and she almost feels ephemeral in her own way, like she can just be blown away or lost in a current. She is dealing with her own bouts of depression and mental illness and lack of feeling accepted and loved. And so this was a really hard book to read, but it was also very beautiful seeing her relationship with Preston. And it was just really lovely to see the fantasy side of the book as well. It's set in kind of a wet, dark, damp kind of environment because the entire city and the area where they are currently going in order to restore this home is drowning. So you're surrounded by water and it's just very, very perfect for the fall winter time. It definitely has a darker feel, a darker vibe to it, but a very beautifully written story. I wouldn't say there's like any true murder or anything like that happens where it would be a true dark academia, but given the fact that it is two university students, it does have to do with literature, it does have to do with, a thesis being proven, and given the fact that we do have the evil fairy king that's being discussed in the world of fantasy as well, it still has elements of that dark academia, which I really enjoyed. And overall, this book was a pleasure to read. When I was reading it, I did have a hard time getting through this book. However, once I finished it, I definitely felt like it was very thought-provoking and it stayed with me for a while. So this book ended up getting a 4-star. A Theory in Dreaming basically picks up where A Study in Drowning ends, which is these two characters coming across a very crazy realization and finding and then publishing their findings, but their findings are rejected by a vast majority of the Lyrians, and they're afraid that if the paper is published at full capacity, it'll actually destroy the Lyrian morale, especially during the time when Argant and Lyria are at war. So these two students are unfortunately facing the blowout of this paper and the discrediting of one of the greatest authors of all time. And they are facing the propaganda and the hatred at the university when they come back to the school. So even though Effie has proved herself and she's gotten into the literature college has not been warm or welcoming to her, and she has to rediscover where she stands with these people and find her sense of voice and her sense of purpose, even though she feels like she's slowly drowning. Meanwhile, Preston wants nothing more than to protect Effie from all of this hatred and all of this anger that's being thrown at them, but he doesn't know how to do it. Then he himself is drowning because of his half Argant, half Lyrian background. There's also more story that goes into the Sleeper Museum and what makes up the Sleeper Museum. And we also get to see a little bit more in terms of Preston's realization that there's more than just reality and there might be some truth to the world of fantasy in this book. And I think it was fun to explore that side of Preston, considering how much of a realist he was in the first book. But overall, the story was beautiful, and the relationship between Effie and Preston is so beautiful. And I think this back quote is a perfect quote for the back of this book in terms of what sums up the vibes of this book, which is, just because you love her doesn't mean you can save her. Which is so true. When someone you love has a mental illness, you can absolutely be there for them. You can support them. You can show them all the love in the world. But at the end of the day, only they can pull themselves out of it. And I think the support that these two characters show each other and the growth that the characters have throughout this book is absolutely beautiful. It is a darker read. It is very well done. It is set in a wartime, in the winter, in the cold, in water and rain. Like, even the book itself is kind of like a darker vibe, but it's a beautiful story, and I definitely think it's worth reading, but you just have to be in the right mindset for the book. This was also a 3.5-star read for me, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. It means the absolute world to me that I get to share all these amazing books with you guys. And if you are new here and you enjoyed the content, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. I put out book videos every Wednesday and Sunday on primarily this type of content. Anything that has to do with fiction, you will find it here. So if that's your vibe, I would love to see you back. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. It means the absolute world to me to be able to create this bookish community with you guys and to talk all about all of these amazing books. Your support every video, your support for this channel, it means the absolute world to me. So thank you for being here. And I just wanted to say, wherever you are, whether it's morning, evening, or night, to all of the new watchers, as well as the wonderful community that we're building here, I hope you and your loved ones are having a wonderful day and that you guys are safe and happy and enjoying your books. If any of these books made it to your TBR because of this video, or if you guys have read them yourself, definitely leave me a comment below. And of course, as always, if you guys have any books that you think I need to add to my TBR, especially in the dark academia realm, definitely leave me that comment below. I love reading all the comments and continuing to cultivate this community here. Until next time, I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.